Let me close by saying this. For many of us who were born and raised in this country, including me, it's sometimes easy to forget how special America really is. But I was raised by exiles, by people who know what it is like to lose their country, by people who have a unique perspective on why elections matter, or lack thereof, by people who really understand how different America is from the rest of the world. And they've taught me this my whole life. And they taught me by word and by deed that what makes America great is not that we have more rich people than anybody else. What makes America great is that there are dreams that are impossible everywhere else, but are possible here. And why is that? It's because of the choices that people that came before us made. Almost every other country in the world chose to have the government run the economy. They chose to allow government to decide which companies survive and fail. They chose to allow government to determine which industries are to be rewarded. But the problem is that when government controls the economy, those who can influence government keep winning, and everybody else just stays the same. And so in those countries, the employee never becomes the employer. The small business can never compete with a big business. And no matter how hard your parents work, or how many sacrifices they make, if you weren't born into the right family in those countries, there's only so far you can go. Now, we've had our excesses here in America. But for the better part of 234 years, Americans have chosen something very different. Americans chose individual liberty instead of the false security of government. Americans chose a limited government that exists to protect our rights, not to grant them. Americans chose a free enterprise system designed to provide equality of opportunity, not compel equality of results. And that is why this is the only place in the world where you can open up a business in the spare bedroom of your home. That is why this is the only world where a company that started as an idea drawn out on the back of a cocktail napkin can one day be publicly traded on Wall Street. That's why this is the only country in the world where today's employee is tomorrow's employer. And yet, there are still people in American politics who for some reason cling to this belief that America is better off adopting the economic policies of nations whose people immigrate here from there. Now, they have the right to believe whatever they want. But I do not have that option. You see, I'm one generation removed from a very different life. My mother was one of 7 sisters born to my grandfather that I talked about earlier, born to very humble parents who struggled every day. My father had it even tougher. His mother died when he was only 6 years old. And the day after her funeral, he went to work selling coffee in the streets of Havana with his father, and as best I can tell, he worked from then on for 70 years. They came to America with virtually nothing. No English, no money, no friends. Only the strong determination to provide their children all the opportunities they never had. My mom worked as a cashier, a factory worker, a maid, and a Kmart stock clerk. My dad primarily as a bartender. Both of my parents worked jobs so their children could have careers. And their life was never easy. How many nights did I hear the keys of my 70-year-old father at the door as he came home after another 16-hour day? How many mornings would I wake up and run into my mom who was just coming home from the overnight shift as a stock clerk at Kmart? When you're young and in a hurry, the meaning of those moments, but as the years go by, and as my own children get older, I understand it now. I realize that my parents were once my age, that they once had dreams, that there were things that they once wanted to accomplish. But because of where they were born, because of who they were born to, because they lost their country, their dreams never had a chance. So they came here to America and went to work. And it became the mission of their lives to give us the chance to do everything that they could not. And so now I know that every chance I have ever had, and everything that I will ever accomplish, I owe to God, to my parents' sacrifices, and to the United States of America. See, my parents never achieved wealth or influence, but their hard work opened doors for their children that had been closed for them. And so to me, their story is the very essence of the American miracle. It is a story that is rare in the world, and yet it is common here. It is common here because those that came before us chose to live in a free society. It is common here because those who came before us chose free enterprise. But now our leaders are asking us to choose something very different. They are asking us to abandon the things that separate us from the rest of the world. Those that came before us made their choice. And now, you and I must make ours. Now I must decide, do I want my children to grow up in the country that I grew up in? Or do I want them to grow up in a country like the one my parents grew up in? Now you must decide. Do you want your children to inherit your hopes and your dreams? Or do you want them to inherit your unfulfilled and unresolved problems? And so now we must decide. Do we want to continue to be exceptional? Or are we prepared to become like everybody else? It's a clear choice between two very different futures. And the task this year for us is to make sure that Americans choose the right one. You see, my 4 children, your children and grandchildren, are members of the most important generation in American history. If we succeed in convincing the American people to follow us, theirs will be the most prosperous generation in the history of our country. But if we fail, they will be the first to inherit a diminished nation. The final verdict on our generation will be written by Americans who haven't even been born yet. Let us make sure they're right, that we made the right choice. That in the early years of this century, faced with troubling and uncertain times, there were those who believed that the great American story had run its course. But we did not agree. Fear did not lead us to abandon our liberty. Uncertainty did not lead us to abandon the entrepreneurial spirit. We fought for and held on to those things that made us exceptional. And because we did, there was still one place in the world where the individual was more important than the state. Because we did, there was still at least one place in the world where who does not determine where you get to go. Let us ensure that history's record of this time is clear. That like those Americans that came before us, we rose to face the challenges of our time. Like those Americans who came before us, we made the right choice. And because we did, at least for one generation more, the American miracle lived on. Amen. Thank you all, and God bless you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.